All right, good. We're live here. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to this Monday episode of Crypto with Chris. Again, I was absent last Thursday. I just had too much going on, and next thing I know, I forgot. But we got a lot going on this past week, and there's some fun stuff to report on. And I've been doing quite a bit of deep dives today and over the last few days, just trying to figure out, how to play what we're seeing and how I think it's going to unfold. And so I wanted to start with the cycle here. We're on day 54, setting, big time yearly highs. I mean, this is insane. But also, I'm kind of not surprised. And I think at this point, I've come to the realization that I just, I don't see us doing a major correction between now and the ETF launch. I think what we're seeing here is just people positioning for that. Any dip is getting rapidly bought up. This uptrend has just generally continued upwards and upwards and upwards. And now it's starting to break out again. People are just getting excited about it. And nobody, it just doesn't make any sense that as we get closer to the deadline, we're going to see a big sell-off because everybody wants to be in position for this ETF. That's really all that's happening here. So the idea that somehow we'll see a big dip in December, it just doesn't make sense to me. It just, if already we're seeing this build up now, people aren't going to want to sell, as we get closer to this deadline. Watch, I'm totally wrong and we get this huge crash, but that's just what I'm seeing. So I don't know if that means, I don't know that we're going to see these huge, big green candles like we did today, throughout. I think it'll be more just a case of this generally steady grind upwards like we're seeing, with probably some occasional legs up and maybe we go sideways for a bit, that sort of thing. Let me look at this chart here with a little bit more lines and things on it. So, kind of going back to that trend line that I talked about last time, this is that big trend line that we've been on, starting from the beginning of basically the beginning of the cycle, where we touched it here, we touched it here, we touched it here, we broke down here, came back, and we've just been riding the same exact trajectory really for the entire year. This has been, quote, the trajectory that we've been on, and we're still holding to it, true 12 months later, basically 11 months later. So I expect us to basically just roughly continue on the same trajectory, maybe go up a little bit. I still have generally somewhere between 45 and 48 as the next area of resistance that I think we'll run into. I don't know if we get there before the ETF announcement or not, but that's where I feel like we're gonna kind of top out for a minute and take a reset. So here's the next deadline. Well, the deadline, actually, I should move this. In fact, I'm going to move this right now because I kind of have been following it a little bit closer. And from what I've heard, the actual announcement will likely come between the 8th and the 10th on January. So I will move it. Well, I'll move it up a week. So there. So on the 8th, 9th, or 10th is likely when it'll happen. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. And until then, that's just where we're at. So now I want to talk about alts a lot and Bitcoin dominance and alt dominance, because I feel like that's really what's important right now and what's relevant. Bitcoin is just going to kind of do its thing. And the big question now is, where do alts come into play here? Because I know even as we've been running up in this last, going on a couple of months now, alts have been running even harder. Like this whole time where Bitcoin was just kind of, grinding upwards, this slow upward grind, many alts have been doing extremely well. Some have gone up 30, 40x. I personally had one go up 5x in 6 days. And so it's like people look at this and go, oh, crypto's doing great. Bitcoin's gone up. I mean, what is this? Let's see. Since maybe the initial breakout up to even now, that's 20%. Most of my alts are doing 20% a day. In fact, I've got one right now that's up 30% on the day. And another one that's up almost as much as Bitcoin. And so there's place to be had in the alt space for sure. So let's kind of dig into that, because I think let's talk about dominance first. I think what's happening, we're seeing here is I like this chart. So Bitcoin dominance has reversed back upwards. It kind of peaked out and then sort of flattened out. And while, as soon as it flattened out, I think I pointed this out last week. Like if you look at this peak right here and it's come straight down to here, that was the bottom for alts. And then as soon as that happened, alts bounced off of this trend line. And this is when we got those major, major alt gains. And during that same time, Bitcoin, flattened out and kind of just leveled off. But we've seen a reversal now, basically starting here, Bitcoin has ticked back upwards and alts have ticked back down sharply. Now keep in mind what this means is this chart represents basically every alt outside of the top 10. And I don't know how low that goes. I don't know if that includes stuff that's, got a $50,000 market cap or whatever. I don't know exactly where the bottom of that threshold is, but suffice it to say, it's everything outside the top 10 down to whatever, some small amount. And so this is the entire alt market has rolled over. But just because that means the overall net alt market has rolled over, that doesn't mean that like all of them have. And as we can see right now, I mean, we're looking at this today, this alt dominance, is breaking down through this trend line right now today. Meanwhile, I've got one that's up 30%, so there are still picks to be had there. But what you need to kind of keep in mind is like, if we go over and look at this, so this is that same, this sort of light blue chart here. This is that same chart, just in a candle chart. And I like this because we can kind of break it down and do some technical analysis on it more than just, that line chart. So a couple things I want to point out here. So I like this bull market support band, which is just this kind of these two lines with this cloud in between that goes like here. I've talked about the bull market support band before. If you don't know what it is, it's the red line is the 20-week moving average, the green line, 20-week SMA, simple moving average. And the green line is the 21 exponential moving average, 21-week exponential moving average. And so these two kind of just dance back and forth between each other. And just, the 20-week in general has been kind of my go-to larger trend metric that I follow for years now. And so I like this just because it kind of just gives you a little cloud to work with and kind of just gives you an easier way to analyze things. So right now, what I'm paying attention to is this others dominance going to come down and touch this bull market support band or even break down through it? Outside of this, big bear trend that all of crypto went through, we had a similar sort of situation happen in the last cycle, right around the second half of 2020, coming into the beginning of 2021. Where Bitcoin just went on this crazy mega run and alts just really bottomed out big time against Bitcoin. And it broke down through the alt dominance, broke down through this bull market support band. And it took 9 whole weeks for it to get down to the bottom. So for 9 whole weeks, everybody was watching all their alt positions just bleed out, profusely against Bitcoin. I personally was one of them, and I remember freaking out at the time, and I even capitulated on one of my big alt positions, right towards the bottom of this, and then immediately had to buy it back, the next week. So what I'm looking for here is if I see, keeping in mind the larger sort of fundamental conditions that are at play, the ETF narrative, all of that, that's telling me that maybe alts are cooked for the moment. Bitcoin may go on this run here for the next, potentially 6+ weeks or more, or more, 6 to 9 to 12 weeks or more, centered around this ETF narrative. And right now I'm in I'm in all alt positions. I don't have any Bitcoin at the moment, but I'm going to be looking at this really closely here. And if alt dominance does break down through this bull market support band, kind of, in the same magnitude that it did over here, I will look to probably exit most, if not all of my alt positions, kind of knowing that it's not going to just be a quick dip likely because of the ETF narrative. So it could be a scenario where we do get, a month to 2 to 3 months plus of Bitcoin just dominance running. And so it's like, sure, you could look at this and go, well, yeah, it dipped here. But, if you look at this overall trend, starting from the bottom all the way to here, it's like, well, who cares if it dipped? If you'd have just held the whole time and not touched anything, you'd have been fine. And yeah, totally. That's 100% correct. You would have been absolutely fine if you'd have just ignored this and left it. And there's a very good argument to be made that even if the scenario plays out exactly the same here, where Bitcoin does go on a huge rally in this next quarter, let's say, that you won't still end up with the same scenario where alts will ultimately outpace Bitcoin in the end anyway. And they very likely will. Certainly most of them will. And so, sure, you could say, okay, well, who cares then? Just leave it alone. Don't touch it. Forget about it. What, put the computer down and come back in 2 years. And that's totally fine. But if you want to be active about it, there could be a play to be had here, because certainly being able to catch this big of a dip in dominance, granted, we don't know if it's going to do this to the same level, but being able to catch a dip like this and, try and execute to buy closer to the bottom and ride up this rally, that's significantly more gains than, if you'd have just rode it from the top. If you'd have come up here, sold here, bought back here, and rode this up, you'd have done a lot better. So 2 schools of thought there. The first one, leaving it alone, is obviously the easy passive play with almost certain big gains to be had. The second one, there's a lot of room for error. There's a lot of room for human error. There's, you have to execute things properly. The market has to actually do what you think it's going to do and play out how you think it will. And then you have to be able to execute on that play and actually sell it at this point and actually buy it at, quote, the bottom. And can you do that? And all of that. And so it's kind of easy to go, well, that looks really juicy. I want to capitalize on something like this. But it's often a lot easier said than done. And very often the people that just buy here and sell here end up 10 times better off than the people who try to muck about with this kind of stuff. So if you're the kind of person that is like me and sits and stares at charts, for hours every day and is always, kind of in a position to execute all the time, then this is something, and of course, if you've got sort of experience and confidence in your charting ability and you feel like you have a good way to sort of gauge when the bottom could be in, then, that's something you think about. But probably if you're thinking about that already, then you already know that that's something you want to entertain. But if that just sounds crazy to you, then don't worry about this so much. I think if you're in some alt positions right now and you see Bitcoin going on this huge mega rally, the worst thing you can do is wait and sell them and then, buy a bunch of Bitcoin right here, because you think, oh no, I missed it. I don't know. I should have been in Bitcoin this whole time. And then so you sell all your alts, right here, and you buy Bitcoin, and then alts just go on this insane rally, and you kind of lose twice. So you have to be careful of that too. Basically, if you're gonna commit to the strategy of holding, then you have to be able to weather that storm of Bitcoin potentially going up 30, 40, 50%, between now and the end of the year or Q1, and your alt's not doing anywhere nearly as well. And you have to kind of buckle down and hold tight and be patient and be strong in your conviction and know that in the end, it's likely that your alt positions will do well. Of course, that's all predicated on the idea that you picked the right alt positions to begin with, and you didn't pick ones that are going to be duds this cycle and all of that. So kind of the bottom line, it's tricky with alts. You can do far better than Bitcoin, but it's a lot more active, and you can't just the worst thing you can do is pick some alt that you think is going to be some amazing tech 2 years from now, and the world is going to adopt it, and then you just hold on it for dear life and don't sell it, and you end up just going down with the ship, and meanwhile Bitcoin just blows it away. So it's like, if you're buying alt positions, especially further out the risk curve, you have to commit to being active with those positions, and you have to commit to doing some analysis and commit to the idea that you might need to pull the plug at some point. And that, the idea of don't get married to any alt position, because they can and they will bite you. So this is why a lot of people just buy Bitcoin and say, forget about it. I don't want to mess with any of this stuff. I'm just going to buy Bitcoin. And that's fine too. But for the people that want to kind of get their hands dirty this is what I'm seeing here. So going forward, for the next 2 to 3 weeks, especially, I'm going to be watching this really close here to see if this rolls over and starts closing through the bottom side of this. We can already see a couple of hints of this happening, or a couple of hits of a trend reversal happening, because if you notice these two moving averages, and seeing which one is on the top side and which one is on the bottom side is a good indication too. Like when the green one is on the top side, that generally signals an uptrend. When it reverses over to the bottom and the red comes up on the top side, then that's starting to indicate, well, the crossover is indicating a trend reversal, and you need to pay attention to that. And right now we've got that crossover. It really just happened like this week. So that's sort of the first signal to pay attention to. That's not to say that it can't bounce. That's not to say that this can't come down and touch these lines and put another leg up. It absolutely could. So don't just base it on any one single factor. But I am going to look for, I'm going to kind of be looking for a scenario like this. If we start getting some big wicks down through here, we start getting one big fat red candle down through here, it's going to be time to pull the plug. But I say that, but keep in mind, this is a close down through here like this is going to change my bias, but it's not necessarily going to mean go and sell every alt position that I'm in currently automatically without, without prejudice. Like I need to actually look at each chart, which I'm going to do here in a second, and, determine, is this still in an uptrend versus Bitcoin, this individual asset? Is this individual asset still showing relative strength against Bitcoin? Because some of them will. And so it doesn't mean a close down below this doesn't mean just cut bait and run, entirely. And so let's kind of look at what that means now with some of these individual ones. ETH. Well, I'm not even in ETH. I'm not even going to look at ETH. So let's look at, and I'm just going to kind of focus on the Bitcoin chart specifically in this case, because that's really what we're talking about is Bitcoin dominance versus alt dominance. So this is Solana Bitcoin. Here's that same sort of bull market support band. It's all the way down here. And honestly, Solana looks really good here. Let's look at it on the daily to see. So what kind of what you do with really any TA is you start looking at lower timeframes first, and you start looking for trend reversals on lower timeframes, and then you start looking for trend reversals on higher timeframes to see if those lower timeframe reversals are sort of carrying through to higher timeframes, or are they just kind of, singular events. So right now, what we can see, again, here's that bull market support band. This is showing the 20-week moving averages. These are the 20-day moving averages, 20 and 10-day moving averages. So, against Bitcoin, we can see, this is definitely the signs of a rollover on a daily time frame. We've had the green cross back down over the red, so the 10-day is crossed below the 20-day, and we're seeing price now coming down to the bottom of the bands on the daily, and so this is, and we're seeing it basically just kind of go flat. This is kind of a classic indication of a rollover here. Now, it hasn't fully materialized on the weekly time frame yet. It's still pretty overextended. It still hasn't really set a lower low here. It's still just kind of peeking back into the inside of the Bollinger Bands. Everything is still pushing upwards. The 10 week is still way extended above the 20 week. So on the weekly, this still looks okay. But again, if you go back to the daily, there's definitely some red flags here. So what I'm going to look for is for sort of a continuation of this trend reversal on the daily. And I'm going to be real wary of it, coming back down. I don't want to wait until it gets all the way down here if it's already painfully obvious that it's going to roll over. And so one of the sort of the next thing I'm going to look for is, on the weekly time frame, I'm going to look for, does price come down and touch the 10-week moving average? Or does the 10-week moving average come up? Do we get to where the price and the 10-week moving average are touching each other, and maybe price looks like it's going to cross back down below the 10-week moving average? That's kind of the next line of defense. So if we see that happening, there's a pretty good chance we're seeing a rollover. That's a pretty good chance we're seeing Bitcoin showing enough continued strength against this asset in particular that this trend is going to continue. So, I might wait. Going back to this dominance chart here. Going back to this dominance chart here, maybe this has already crossed over. Say hypothetically, this has already crossed down over and it's down below, but I'm looking at my Solana chart and I'm like, well, it still looks pretty good. It still hasn't even come down to the 10-week moving average yet. If I'm seeing the whole market, the whole alt market cross below, I'm going to kind of be on high alert for everything. And so if something looks like it's sort of losing strength and it's going to continue to lose strength, I might cut bait as soon as it touches like the 10-week moving average, whenever that happens, whether that means the 10-week moving average comes up to meet price or price comes down to meet it or somewhere in the middle. That's generally not a good sign, because basically the next step at that point is full rollover, full trend reversal on the weekly time frame. So that's kind of what I'm going to basically be looking for on every single one of these chart positions, is where is it both on the daily and on the weekly in relation to the 10-week moving average. And I'm going to starting with the daily timeframes for all of these to be looking for rollovers. And so let's go to the next one. Let's look at BitTensor here. BitTensor still looks okay on the daily, compared to the Solana chart. So the Solana chart, the 10 days already rolled over below the 20. Price is already down at the bottom of the bands. Big, ugly red candle here. This doesn't look nearly as bad. Price is still pretty well separated. Yes, the two look to be converging. The two moving averages do look to be converging a bit. But, price is still punching up on the upper half of the bands, bouncing basically between the upper half of the bands and the 10-week moving average, or 10-day moving average. Sorry. So this still is a healthy chart. Yes, we have this, bearish divergence flag on the daily, and that is an indication of a potential reversal, or rather an indication of slowing momentum. So that's certainly something to keep in mind. But you can see, compared to, again, the Solana chart, which already is rolling over, is already showing signs of a rollover, this is not yet. So I wouldn't necessarily look to cut bait on this one as quickly as I would, especially if that, dominance chart fully did close below the bull market support band. I might give this one a little bit more room to run. I might not be so quick to pull the trigger on this one yet. Look at it on the weekly. It's crazy. I mean, it's still well out. It hasn't even closed inside the Bollinger Bands yet on the weekly time frame. Again, going back and comparing it to the Solana, it's night and day difference. Solana is already, you've got, you could almost count this 3 full candle closures inside the bands, at least 2. Whereas BitTensor, you're not even 1, not even close. So this is what relative strength looks like. And this is an example of something that you would say, well, yeah, the alt market as a whole, as a net, is going down against Bitcoin, but that doesn't mean every alt is going down against Bitcoin, and that doesn't mean this is an example of why you shouldn't just go and dump all your alts wholesale without kind of looking at them individually. So, based on this, I'm not planning on selling my Tau anytime soon. And honestly, it's going to take in this specific asset, it's going to take an awful lot for me to want to sell it at all at any point. But yeah, this is perfect relative strength against Bitcoin. This is not slowing down. Yes, it's basically flat on the day. It's only up, or actually it's down against Bitcoin on the day. It's USD pair. It's up 0.73%. So it's basically flat on the day against USD. Its Bitcoin pair is down on the day, but even still, this is very healthy. We haven't even had a single touch against the 20-day moving average yet in this entire uptrend. So this is perfect here. Looking at this next one, Zero Knowledge. Zero Knowledge is tricky because there's just not enough price history, but to really, in fact, I don't even think we have a bull market support band because there hasn't even been 20 weeks yet. So you can't really even do the same type of analysis, but we can look at it on the daily and see, well, it is kind of showing signs of a rollover. It is touching the 20-day moving average here. So yeah, this is one that is an example. Again, it's not as bad as Solana. We still haven't had a full crossover yet. We still haven't had the price come down and touch the bottom of the Bollinger Bands yet. The Bollinger Bands are still fairly well, deviated still. So the spread on that is still pretty big. So Um, this is better than Solana in terms of relative strength. Not as good as BitTensor, but is still okay. So this is one I'll keep an eye on. It's tricky with this one too. You have to another thing you have to kind of keep in mind is the sort of the overall market cap of the project, and sort of where things are at there, and sort of where they are in their stage of development. You know, you do have to kind of factor in some fundamentals too, and things like hype. You know, that's absolutely important. And so right now, this is a really, really small market cap asset. This is its entire price history in days, so it's not old at all. So this one's going to be a little bit different. And this might be one that I may opt to hold on to and ride through any big dip also. But yeah, let's look at, so Kaspa. Kaspa's another one. So Kaspa looks a little bit more like Solana does. If we kind of go back and look, not too dissimilar. So we've got a basically sideways price action. We've got the moving averages crossing over, a touch on the bottom of the bands. If we go back to Kaspa, not quite as bad. We didn't have the big red candle today like Solana did, all the way back down to the bottom of the bands. But we do have more or less the same type of price action. It's, you know, been sideways for a while now. Let's see what it looks like on the weekly. Not a ton of price action on this, or history rather, on this one too, but we do have enough to go on. So here, yeah. So here's the 10-week moving average. Here's the bull market support band, still well overextended, still well above the 10-week moving average. So this is actually still showing pretty good strength. And as you can see, going back to the beginning of the year, here's the yearly open against Bitcoin for this asset. It's pretty much been on a solid uptrend the entire year, without really looking back. So this is another example of one that has shown amazing relative strength throughout the entire year against Bitcoin, and is still, you know, basically we've had one weekly candle close inside the bands, and it's still just barely inside the bands, still well above the 10-week moving average. And then on the daily, it's kind of just starting to show initial signals of a rollover. You know, I can't quite zoom in. Maybe the two have crossed over. Maybe. I can't see. If not, they're sort of right on top of each other. So this is your initial signs. But is this also just a bull flag? You know, these bands are tightening back up. It could be poised to make another, you know, big price movement, just kind of like it did when the bands got tightened back here again. We don't know that, but I guess we'll see. I'm not going to sell this one just yet, because it is still looking so good on the weekly. But, you know, this is certainly something I'm going to pay attention to. And if I start to see multiple closures below this 20-day moving average, if I start to see price come down and start to touch the bottom side of these Bollinger Bands here, then, you know, that might be a candidate in the event that, you know, coming back to here, in the event that this crossover does happen, like we got back here, this one might be a candidate to offload for a period of time and, you know, kind of reset it once the alt bottom is in. So this is one that I'll be keeping an eye on as far as that goes. This one too, same kind of deal. Oops, that's a USD pair. This one, yeah, this one actually looks a little bit worse than Kaspa does. In fact, this one I've got a very short leash on it. I've only been in this one for a few days anyway. And honestly, if I don't start to see some kind of better price action against Bitcoin, I'm going to be cutting bait on this one here pretty quick. Just because it was more just a quicker play for me anyway. I don't have a ton of conviction in it. Its price does look decent against Bitcoin on the year, but it's had kind of just two big run-ups, you know, and the rest of the time it's been bleeding out all the way back down to the bull market support band, where it consolidated a little bit, and then it had a couple more big legs up. And I don't want to sit and watch this bleed all the way back down to this support band again. So that's just stupid. So if I see you kind of one or two more daily closes here that don't look like we're going to get some kind of strength here, then I'll be pulling the plug on that one, probably even before the overall market dominance, you know, crosses over that line. Rune, which I'm actually not in, but let's take a look at it anyway. So Rune actually, again, is showing good relative strength. Rune looks stronger than a lot of these. It's still kind of bouncing in between the top half of the bands and the 20-day moving average. It still hasn't really had a proper close below the 20-day moving average. So, and then what's it look like on the weekly? Yeah, still way overextended below the 10-day or 10-week moving average. Basically had kind of one close inside the band and then another big run up. And then this current week, it's inside the bands, but it hasn't yet closed inside of it. So this is still showing solid relative strength on the weekly time frame. And even on the daily time frame, I think it looks really good too. The moving averages got close to crossing over, but it sort of rebounded on that strength of that big green candle that week, and it's sort of held it and is starting to diverge further away from it again. So Rune is a solid looking chart right now, I think. And if I was holding it, which I probably should be, it's one that I would probably, sit tight on for a minute and wait to see how it played out before pulling the plug on it, like I might, some of these other ones. Injective, I'm also not in this one, but I want to look at it too, because it's also been a really good example of something that has just gone up against Bitcoin for the entire year, like Kaspa has. It actually is down at its 10-week moving average right now. So it's already kind of in a full-blown rollover and is nearing the bull market support band. In fact, it's probably the closest we've seen yet out of any of these that are near the bull market support band. So I'm sure on the weekly it's going to tell an even worse story. But so I like this project. I think it's a good project. Now is not the time to be in this. And if I was in it, I would be getting out of it. But I do think that this still, just based on its history against Bitcoin, for the entire year, this has been a really good chart, and I think it will continue to be. But this would be one that, probably would suffer in the event that the Bitcoin dominance went on a big run. I'm sure this would blow right through here, probably for the first time in the year. So I won't be getting into that one. Celestia, that's just no. Let's look at, so this is kind of one. So right now the Solana ecosystem, even though Solana itself has been sort of flat and kind of just meh over the last week or two, there's assets in the Solana ecosystem itself that are really taking off. And that's kind of where the plays are these days at the moment. And so this is one of them. I missed this initial run up. This one did like a 30x, between here and here, just ridiculous. I missed that, but I did buy once it kind of leveled off and it looked like it was going to kind of come down to this trend line here. I did buy somewhere around here, thinking that it would run up again, and sure enough, it did. So I'm up a nice little chunk on this one. I don't plan on holding this one very long. I'm just going to or rather, I should say, I'm going to hold it as long as I think the trend, dictates. I'm not saying that this is something that I'm going to try and diamond hand throughout the rest of the cycle. That's not to say also that I won't buy in and out of it, 10 times or more for all I know, but it's not going to be one that I'm just bonk for the win, bonk all the way. I'm going to load up on bonk and it's going to make me rich. That's not what I think. This is more just this is a meme token. I mean, it's a dog coin, literally. So of course, you're not going to base, your entire portfolio off of it for the duration of a cycle. But well, who knows? Maybe you will, and maybe you'll make $10 million, and I'm the fool. Who knows? But regardless, I'm just going to kind of be watching this one and sort of, this one is going to be constantly in flux for me. But for right now, it's nice. It looks very nice. It's way above the Bollinger Bands, or I'm sorry, way above the bull market support band. Moving averages are both moving upwards, diverging apart. I'm not going to pull the plug on this one. This one is kind of just, I'm looking at in isolation. Also, is this the BTC chart? Am I even looking at no, I was looking at the USD chart. Well, the BTC chart is the same. I mean, it's literally exactly the same. So, and I don't think this one has even been around for very long. I guess it has. So long enough anyway. So that's what I'm looking at here. I'm just going to kind of play this one day to day and see how it goes. There's every possibility that I will sell it tomorrow in the event that it comes up and touches this line here and doesn't, strongly break through it. If it comes up and kind of touches this line here and bounces off of it, there's every chance that I will sell it and take some profit, or at least sell a good portion of this position and just kind of roll it back into Solana or something for now. And kind of how I'm playing a lot of these is I'm using at the moment. So like the whole theory sort of throughout the cycle is like, you look at Bitcoin as kind of the base currency, and every alt position that you're in should be outpacing Bitcoin. So that's why all of these charts that I look at, I'm careful to pay attention to the Bitcoin chart, because if whatever alt I'm in isn't outpacing Bitcoin, then you shouldn't be in it. You should just be in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is kind of my base currency that I'm judging every other altcoin in, and it needs to be at least outpacing that. And so every alt position that you're in really kind of should be owned in an effort to increase your Bitcoin stack, is effectively what you're trying to do. But with a lot of these, like with Bonk, basically what I'm doing is in the short term, I'm really kind of using Solana as my sort of base currency in that scenario, provided Solana continues to go up against Bitcoin. And I'm really just sort of doing these little Solana ecosystem buys kind of in an effort to grow my Solana stack. So I'm taking profits that I make from these little trades here and just adding it, buying more Solana with the profits and loading it into that. And then eventually when I go to take profit from Solana, I'll dump that into Bitcoin. And ultimately grow my Bitcoin stack. So I'm doing sort of a multi-tiered profit-taking scheme here, where first it's going into Solana and then it's going into Bitcoin. Notice I'm not talking about ETH in that equation at all. In the last cycle, it would have been ETH that I would have been working against, and I would have had a lot of alt versus ETH charts that I'd be paying attention to make sure everything was outpacing ETH. But at the moment, pretty much everything is outpacing ETH, really. And so ETH isn't even in the picture as far as that goes. And so really I'm, growing Solana, and then I'm going to stack it into Bitcoin down the road. So, that's kind of where I'm at. That's what I'm paying attention to. I guess to kind of recap, this is the line that I'm really paying close attention to. It's already sort of broken this trend line that I've drawn, but of the different metrics that I give weight to, a diagonal trend line is probably the least weight out of all of them. Really, I pay more attention to horizontal levels, more attention to moving averages, and then I kind of throw in diagonal lines in there just to kind of give me a visual reference of a possible change in direction or change in trend. So what I'm paying attention to here is this bull market support band, and what's going to happen in the coming days. And it could happen as soon as this week. We could see a major if this Bitcoin run continues and it gets up to 45, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if Bitcoin gets up to 45, or where this line is at 45.5. If it bounces there and gets firmly rejected, or if it just blows up through it. If it blows up through it, it's probably going to keep running, and I'll probably look to exit a lot of these alt positions, the ones that I mentioned outside of a couple. If it gets firmly rejected off of this and bounces hard back down, then, I'm going to take a little bit more of a wait and see and go from there. So I'll be factoring in this level here. I'll be factoring in these moving averages here, and then on, all of the individual charts on the daily and the weekly. So, that's the play. That's where I'm at, and that's what I'm going to be looking for. So, I guess I will hopefully try to do an episode on Thursday this week. I know I've kind of skipped the last two. My plan is to do that. So, I'm going to assume that I'll be back on Thursday, and I will see everybody then. And until then, have a good rest of your week. All right.